This webinar basically covers user management, and up until this point, for all of the existing users that we have in using the system, you've had to rely on Envisage software to do all your user management. I know that's been kind of a burden. When you wanted to deactivate a user, you'd have to email support. You needed a new user, you had to email support, etc. With this new release, you're going to be able to do that yourself. So basically what that means is you'll be able to add your own users, modify users, deactivate your own users. You'll have the ability to do password resets, although each user has the ability to do it themselves, but if for some reason they're struggling with that, you'll be able to do resets on the passwords. You'll be able to set permissions, view who's active, and you know, who's most recent logins, and then request service orders. So if you don't have any remaining licenses, you'll be able to request those right out of your system. So the first thing I want to talk about is the ability to do that, to do these things that I just mentioned, is not going to be for everybody in the practice. Obviously, you don't probably want everybody in your center to be given the ability to add users or request new users and things of that nature. Most of you, the administrators in the practices, should have received an email yesterday from us asking for who in your center should be given the ability to do these things. And if you've already responded to that, it's likely already taken care of. If you haven't responded to that or you didn't get that email, just go ahead and send an email to support@envisagesoftware.com with the list of folks that should be given the permissions to do the things that we're about to show you here. Okay. So with that being said, let's talk about how we do these things and start going through some of the material. First of all, in the support link on the left-hand side of the pane, over here on the left side of the page, if you click on support, you'll notice that a new tab has been added to the top of the page called service orders. And if you click on that, there are 4 sections within here, and we will be covering all 4 of these here today. The first one that I want to talk about is the section that says Manage Users. So if you go to the support section, you click on Service Orders, and you click on Manage Users, that is going to take you to your list of users. Now there are a couple list views already created for you for this list. So the default one likely is going to be active users, meaning that users that currently have the ability to log in. Okay. You also have a list view here for all users, which is going to show you, both current and previous employees that were able to log in. From the list, looking at the list, you can actually see last logins here, so you can look to see if your staff is active in the system and if they've logged in recently. And then clicking on a staff member here, so let me go ahead and just click on one from the list. That will take you into the detail page where we'll be able to see email addresses, usernames, and scrolling down, we'll also be able to see permissions. And when I say permissions, we have 2 types. There's TotalABA settings, and then there's permission set assignments. And we'll be going over the TotalABA settings in just a few moments and explaining those in detail. As far as what permission sets are, permission sets basically give people the permissions to do certain things within the software. So you might notice that some of your staff doesn't have the ability to do things like maybe edit appointments or things to that nature. Permission sets is what determines that, and we certainly don't expect you to become experts on permission sets. We actually will continue to set up your permission sets, and we've already done so for all the existing practices. We've already set up your permission sets, how you want them to be set up. And so the main thing to know here is that as you're adding a new user, what you can do, if you're not sure what permission sets to assign to a particular user, what we highly recommend is look at one of your previously created users. So look at a user that, perhaps has the same permissions that you want to give to your new users, see what permission sets they have, and just add the same exact permission sets to the new user. And that's going to be a way to keep this simple and not have to, understand every permission set in the system. Just look at existing users and model the new user's permissions after your existing users, because we've already gone in and set those up and customized your permissions during your implementation period. Now I can tell you, if you do click on a permission set, it will take you to a screen that will show you some detail and a little description of what the permission set is. So there's that too. But again, we do highly recommend just model your permissions after based on your previously created users. Okay. Now the next thing I want to talk about is creating a new user. So if you have a new user in the practice, a new employee that you want to give access to the system, how do we do that? Now, the first thing to note is, in order to create a new user, you have to have an available license. And many of you existing practices are probably familiar with the licensing functionality in the software. Now, there's a couple places where you can check to see if you do have any available licenses. And the first place is if you go back to that support section on the left pane, and you go to the Service Orders tab, where we were just a minute ago, you can click on the Company Information link. Okay, the Company Information link is going to take you to a page that looks like this, although keep in mind, my demo site is going to have a lot more to it than your site. And where we're looking at is down here in the User Licenses section, and you can see I have all kinds of different options here. You only have a limited number. I think there's like 3 or 4 that you'll have options down here. But the important one to look at, and the one that you want to pay attention to, is the one named Salesforce Platform. Okay, and so if you look at Salesforce Platform, it's going to tell you how many total licenses you currently have, how many are being used, and how many remaining licenses you have. And if you have greater than 0 remaining licenses, you can add a new user. Okay, if you have 0, then you need to add a new user. There's 2 ways to go about that. One way is to look to see if you have any users that can be deactivated, and we will go through the deactivation process during this webinar. Or you'll need to submit a new service order, and we have a nice, efficient way of doing that now that works a little better probably than the way that you've been doing it, and we'll definitely be explaining that. Okay. So I can see here that I do have a remaining license, so I'm going to go ahead and just go back to the Support tab and to my Service Orders section, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Manage Users. And at the top of the screen, you'll see that there is a New User button, very similar to everything else that we've have in the system as far as creating something new. So I'm going to go ahead and click New User, and up is going to come the screen for entering in the new user. And just like on every other section of the system, the red bars depict the required fields. And so we'll be going through some of these over here on the left in a moment. But on the right side, the first thing I want to talk about is where it says User License. You'll need to set that to Salesforce Platform. So that's the very first thing that you'll do, is set that to Salesforce Platform. Now, if you get here, and perhaps you did not check the company information section that I just showed you to see if you had any available license, and you get here and you open up this pull-down menu, and again, you won't have as many options as I have here. You'll just have a few. But if you get here, you look under User License, and Salesforce Platform is not an option to choose from, then it means you don't have any available licenses. So that's another way that you can find out if you have any available licenses or not, is when you create the user, if you have Salesforce Platform as an option here, then you have available license, otherwise you don't. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and select Salesforce Platform there, and that's going to specify the role of the profile for you, so you don't need to worry about that part of it. Just specify the user license, and then we're going to go ahead and actually enter in the information for the user. So I'll go ahead and enter in first and last name. That's pretty obvious and self-explanatory. Alias, usually when we create them, we just let it default, so it's automatically put in a default for me. If you want to put in a different alias, you're more than welcome to. And then there is 2 fields. So there's one field for email and one field for username. Most of the time, these are the same. Okay. Now the difference is that email is the email address where all of the emails will be received. And when I say all of the emails, what I mean by that is, if you are adding a new user, you need to send an activation email, which we'll be doing in a moment. That email will go to the email address. Any verification codes will go to that email address. Any password reset emails or appointment notifications will all go to the address. The username field is what you type in when you log in. So when you log into the system, you put a username in, which is typically an email address. It has to be in an email address format, as a matter of fact, and that's what the username is. So most of the time, I'd say probably 90% of the time, those are the same. However, I know we do have some customers that do have different email address, do like to have a username and with a different email in there. So there may be situations where you may want that different, but in most cases, it's going to be the same. Okay, so in this case, my example, I'm going to go ahead and put them as the same. Now, one other quick side note about the username is we do use, obviously, the Salesforce platform, development platform for our system here. And if your new staff member that you're adding has ever logged into another Salesforce system, okay, whether it be with a previous employer or you know, just they have their own Salesforce system for whatever reason, you cannot use the same username on two different logins for two different Salesforce instances. So if you ever are creating a new user and it tells you that that username is taken, that could mean one of two things. They're already created in your site and that username is already in there, or they've logged into another Salesforce system with that same username, in which case you may need to change it here, maybe put a 1 after it or something to that nature so that it's unique per, you know, their other Salesforce login. So that may not be very common, but I wanted to bring that up in case that ever occurs. Now, scrolling down, you know, a lot of these other fields I'm going to skip over for now. Let's just jump right down into the section called TotalABA settings, and let's explain what these are. First of all, you have the option of choosing your TotalABA license type, and the two license types available are non-therapist and therapist. Keep in mind, if you set them up as a non-therapist, they will not be able to have student appointments assigned to them, and they will not be able to create sessions. So they have to have a therapist license in order to be able to do those things. Okay. Directly below that, there is a field for create modify students. That means that if you did not want them to be able to create students in your database or modify students, you could go ahead and uncheck that. Allow scheduling, directly below that, is a field that doesn't necessarily mean, that's a little confusing because it doesn't necessarily mean that they are able to schedule appointments. Yeah, that's kind of a common misunderstanding, is that that means that they're not able to schedule. That actually means, are they able to be scheduled for? In other words, is their name going to show up on the calendar so that you can schedule appointments underneath of this staff member's name? Okay, so that's what allow scheduling is. Over on the right side, you have a checkbox for allow session sign-off. As many of you know, there's the signing of sessions is a function in the system that perhaps is limited to certain staff members. So perhaps you only want perhaps the BCBAs to be able to sign off on sessions, for example. So anybody that has this checked has the permission to sign off on sessions. Okay, those that don't obviously won't be able to do so. And then the last TotalABA setting here is mass delete appointments, which is fairly uncommon, and we recommend being very careful with who you might give that permission to. If you're unfamiliar with mass delete appointments, basically it's a feature that allows appointments to be deleted in mass. So you could delete appointments from this date forward, or for an entire day, or for an entire staff member. So if a staff member quit and you want to just get all their appointments and cancel all their appointments from this point forward, mass delete appointments would allow you to do that. However, as I said, you want to be very careful with that permission because in the wrong hands or used the wrong way, it could perhaps result in accidentally deleting, you know, entire calendars of appointments that maybe shouldn't have been deleted. So what I typically recommend, again, same thing as I said earlier, look at your previously created users, see what they have specified, and, you know, mimic their permissions as you're setting up your new users. Okay. Below that, you have your locale settings. You're not going to need to touch that. That's going to default to the appropriate information. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump all the way to the bottom to the little checkbox at the bottom that says generate new password and notify user immediately. That is the checkbox that when I hit save will automatically send the invitation email to the email address that we put in above this, which will allow them to enter in their password and then log in going forward. So if you needed to create a user but they're not starting until Monday perhaps, and you didn't want to send the invitation right away, then uncheck that checkbox and save it. And then when you are ready to send it, then you'll just edit the information, and I'll show you how to edit a user in a moment. Check it off at that point, and then hit save, and that will send the invitation. So that checkbox at the bottom is your checkbox for when that's checked and you hit save, that's going to send the invitation email. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save that staff member as I already have a staff member named John in there, so it's not going to let me save it, but or excuse me, with a nickname of John. But at that point, I saved the user, and if I had that checkbox checked, that would have sent the invitation to the staff member. Okay. Now, however, if they tried to log in at that point, they would not be able to do anything in the system. And the reason for that is if we look down at the bottom, they have no permission sets assigned to them, meaning if they could log in, but it's not going to let them do much. Okay, so we have to assign them permissions in order for them to be able to perform certain duties. So as I said earlier, now a couple times, look at your existing users and see what permissions you want to give to this one. And all you need to do to assign, provide permissions is click the button that says Edit Assignments down here right next to the Permission Set Assignment section. And that'll take you to the edit screen with all of the available permission sets. And you're just going to add to the right side any permissions that you want them to have. And you're going to hit send, and that's save, excuse me, and that's how you're going to assign them permissions. Okay. So now let's talk about modifying a user. Very common to have to modify users for a number of different reasons. Maybe we put in the wrong email address. Very common. They give us one email address, and then they realize that they want it sent to a different email address. Or maybe we didn't send their invitation right away, we want to send it later. Or, you know, for any other reason. Or they didn't get their invitation. That's kind of common too, is the first time sometimes people dig into their junk mail or something, they don't see it right away. So just go to your active users list, click the edit link next to the staff member that you want to edit. Okay, and at this point you could change anything you might need to change. Okay. Now if you're changing the email address and they've already logged in, they will receive an email at the new email address asking them to confirm the change. Okay, so if it wasn't a mistake, but we're just changing their email address, then when you put the new one in and save it, it's going to send them an email with a little link to verify that change. Okay. And then scrolling down on the page again, if I didn't invite the staff member right away, or if I needed to send another invitation because they didn't get the first one, I'm just going to check that checkbox again and hit save, and that's going to resend the invitation. Okay, so that just resent the invitation, that address. Now, if people are having problems with their password, everybody, when they log in on the login screen, there is a link that says reset password. But we still, at Invista Software, get quite a few requests from people saying, can you please reset this person's password? Okay, well, now you'll be able to do that as an administrator, and it's fairly easy to do. You're just going to go to your active users list. You're going to click on that username. And at the top of the page, you'll see that there is a button for reset password. Just press that, hit OK, and that's going to send the email to that user with a link that they'll be able to use to reset their password. Okay, fairly easy. Now, if you needed to reset multiple people's passwords, just so you know, you could actually click on the list on the checkboxes here under multiple people, and you'd be able to click the reset password link or button at the top of the list, and that would send several people reset password links if you needed to do that for whatever reason. And then finally, the last topic here before we get into service orders is the notion of deactivating a user. So if we have a user that is no longer going to be with the center as of Friday morning, we're just going to go to our active users list. You're going to go ahead and edit that user. So we'll click the edit link. And right over here where it says active, we're just going to uncheck that checkbox. It's going to give us a little warning telling us what that's going to do. I'll just hit OK there. I'm going to hit save. And that person will no longer have access to the system after that. So it's very, very easy. Just uncheck active, and that basically is going to take care of that. Now, one thing I forgot to mention that I'll talk about real quick before we get into service orders is you might all be familiar with the fact that there's a section in the software called staff members as well. If you go to your staff members list, that basically is going to show you a list of all your staff members and has a lot of neat functionality for keeping track of credentials and certificates and all that fun stuff. You don't have to create a user and then go in and create a staff member. When you create a user, it automatically creates a staff member for you. So you don't have to do the work twice. You just create the user, and as you do that, it automatically creates your staff member record. I just want to give you some insight on that. So the next thing I want to discuss is service orders. And this is a new feature that was just recently added to the software. And basically, service orders is something that you will need to do if you have 0 licenses available. In other words, if you need to order a new license. Okay? So let's talk about how that works. On the left pane, there is the support tab. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the support tab, and I'm going to go to my service orders tab here. And we have 2 sections for service orders. We have manage existing service orders, and then we have the ability to create a new service order. Okay. If you go to the manage existing orders, that's going to show you all of your previously created service orders. Now, that's not going to show you previously created service orders prior to this new feature being released. This is going forward. It's going to show you all the service orders that are listed here. Okay. And this will give you the ability to manage them as well. And actually, you can create a new service order right from here as well. Where it says new service order, you can press that button. Or you could go to the support tab, go to the service order tab at the top, and click directly on create new service order. And when you do that, it's going to bring up the screen that's going to allow you to create the new service order. And it's a pretty simple screen. It's just a matter of putting in the date. Okay, put in the date. That's the date that you want the license to be delivered. And then putting in the number of licenses that you're ordering. So if I wanted this license ASAP, I'm going to put in today's date. Okay, then I'm going to put, let's say that I need to add 2 therapists, so I'll go ahead and put in the 2 therapist licenses there. Okay, and you can save that, which doesn't actually submit that to us. There is another button you need to press to actually get that over to Envisage Software so that they can do the work on their end. But do note that just because you put today's date in does not necessarily mean it's going to be delivered today. Okay, what happens is when we receive these service orders, we then have to place an order with Salesforce. And we'll do that fairly quickly, but Salesforce takes anywhere from 1 to 2 business days to actually provision the license. So if you put in today's date, if you did it in the morning, like I did it right now, it'll probably be available for you tomorrow most likely, but it could take up to 2 business days. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're ordering licenses. It's not going to immediately be available. It can take 1 to 2 days. And if you want one in the future, so let's say this person is starting on Monday and I need a license by Monday, I can put in Monday's date, submit that today. We'll see the date on that. We'll go ahead and order it for that date. And as long as you give us 1 to 2 business days, this should be ready by that date. Okay. So at this point, all I'm going to do is just save the service order. And that, again, that did not submit that to us. That just created the service order. So there may be times when you want to create the service order, but maybe you don't want to submit it to us right away. Maybe you want to wait a couple days for whatever reason. But if you did want to submit it to us, or whenever you do want to submit to us, it's just a matter of hitting the submit button, and I'll go into that in just a second. But note, before you submit it, you also do have the ability to edit and delete it. Okay, after you submit it, you do not. Okay. Now, one more thing, actually I'll talk about revoking in just a second. So let's actually submit this request now to Envisage Software. So all I'm going to do to submit it is I'm going to basically press the submit button, which is going to bring up a screen that looks like this, and notice it has a signature section on it. Okay, if you have a touch screen, you'll actually be able to just use your touch screen in order to sign the service order, or if you don't, you can just use your mouse. Okay. And once you put your signature in and you hit submit, that's going to go ahead and submit that service order to us. Okay, we're going to receive that, and then we're going to go ahead and place that order for you to Salesforce. Okay. Now, a couple other things about this is Let's say you realized you made a mistake. You hit submit and you went, oh, I goofed. I accidentally put 6 licenses instead of 4. Okay? If you get it quick enough, you can revoke that service order. Okay, and that's what the revoke button does there. Now let me back up to what I said a moment ago when I said if you get it quick enough. What I mean by that is there is going to be some sort of lag time in between the time that we receive this and the time that we actually put the order in the Salesforce. Okay, it might be 5 minutes. It could be a couple hours. If you submit it in the middle of the night, we might not get it till the morning and submit it then. So there's going to be some sort of lag time, and we tend to process things pretty quickly. So we'll see that come in, and we'll probably order it pretty quickly. But if you revoked it in between the time that you submitted it before we actually submitted the order to Salesforce, then we will cancel that, and we will not put in place that order. And revoking a service order is just simply a matter of hitting the revoke button there, hit OK, and that sends us another message saying, hey, revoke that, cancel that. Okay. Now, if you did that in time and we had not submitted the service order at that point, your status will update to a status of canceled. So notice that right now it says revoked. If that changes to canceled, you know that we canceled that order. We never placed the order, and you're fine. We canceled it. Okay. However, once we submit the order to Salesforce, they're pretty strict. They won't let you go back. They won't let us go back. So once we submit that order, it is submitted. Okay, so if you didn't revoke it in time and we had already placed the service order, then the status is not going to change to canceled. It's going to change to completed. And if you see a completed status, you're going to end up with a couple more licenses thereafter. Okay. Now, getting back to if you didn't revoke the service order, which is probably going to be the most common scenario. I mean, revoking a service order just means we made a mistake, and I'm sure none of you make mistakes very often. I know I do, but Jeff doesn't. So, so basically, what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the service order section. We're going to go to create new service order. Again, this is just review. I'm going to put in the date that I want to have that license. I'm going to put in the number of licenses I'm ordering. I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to hit the submit button in order to submit it. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my signature, submit it. That's going to submit the order to us. Okay. Now, when we receive that, we're going to go ahead and submit the order to Salesforce. And once we've submitted the order to Salesforce, you'll notice that the status will change to completed. Okay, so that means we submitted the order. Now, a completed status on a service order means that we submitted the order to Salesforce. It does not mean that the licenses are ready to go. Okay, it's actually going to be up to you to check your company information section the next day, or 2 days later, or whenever, to see if you have that available license. Okay, so maybe the next day after you submit them, come into the support section. Again, go to Service Orders tab, go to Company Information, and on that Company Information tab, if you have an available Salesforce platform license, it means that Salesforce provisioned those licenses. You're ready to go ahead and add the new user. Okay. Now, one final thing, and then we'll open it up for questions here, is if you have, I'm going to go and open up the service order that we were just looking at. If you've been ordering licenses all along and you like that piece of paper that we send you that you end up signing off on, and you put those in a filing cabinet, you want to kind of keep doing that. If you press the print button from the service order, it's actually going to give you that almost that same exact formatting that we saw that you're used to getting. So you can see it printed out in the nice PDF format with your signature and all that fun stuff on it. So again, that's just hitting the print icon if you wanted to print those out and put that in a filing cabinet somewhere, or maybe hand that off to somebody. So you still have the ability to print the service order. So that's about it for user management. I will turn it over to Jeff Lewis at this point, and I'll let him go through any of the questions that we might have received during the session here, and then we'll kind of turn you loose and let you get started on that.